Hey, friends. I'm Steve Gramps Towler. Welcome back to Hope Within Reach. Before we get started, I just want to pause for a moment and say thank you. It's honestly hard for me to believe this podcast is now just over 4 months old and already reaching listeners in 19 countries around the world. That humbles me more than I can properly put into words. Because for so many years, these stories lived quietly inside of me. And now somehow people from all over the world are connecting with them. Thank you for that, truly. And this week brought another moment I never could have imagined. I recently sat down with my childhood friend Joey, and afterward he invited me to serve as a legacy project advisor for the documentary he's creating surrounding our high school community. And for a kid who once felt forgotten, that invitation meant a lot, more than I can fully explain.
Our
Yeah,
parents, we find out, are you found out earlier than most, are they're just human beings, and it takes like a while for you to realize that if it's not thrust upon you,
yep,
and hopefully you realize it sometime, in your teens or your 20s.
right, right. Yeah, 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 for sure. So Joey, what ended up leading me to, in a roundabout way, but really, how I got to the valley is that uh, after living with my aunt Joanne, uh, and and her family, my dad came and got me, and a family that my dad worked for uh, in Crystal, they ended up making up a little rearranging and made a little apartment for us in their basement. And so I lived there in Crystal, over on Yukon Avenue, uh, and went to a school called H.O. Sonneson. Back in the day, it's actually where I can't tell. I think it's over here. I got this little scar um, in the third grade from a little fisticuffs,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. So yeah, so I was already creating, causing havoc as a little youngster. But Joey, I had a lot of good. I don't know um, if it's an excuse, but I tell you what, I had a lot of pain that I was trying to figure out, and
Yeah.
so much stuff, and so in third grade, uh, I was more in my own mind. To be frank, I was like an up and coming hockey player, mainly because I owned some of the gear, but especially I had a hockey stick, and so I would be banging on the ceiling, and Elaine, this gal that the yeah that this other family that we lived with, um, she my dad comes home from work one day and she says, Joe, she said, Stevie's driving me bonkers, and he's got to go, um, but you're welcome to stay. So anyways, that's how I understand it. Anyways, okay.
Right.
And I don't know if that's exactly what was said because it sure sounds not great. Uh,
Right.
but we got in the car. My dad had a beautiful '69 GTO rag top, and I would love to get that car someday. That'd be amazing. The but anywho, we drove to Northfield, and my aunt Dorothy and Uncle Ozzy said they would take me in because my dad, made a bunch of calls and trying to figure out where can I, send my kid that he's, as safe as can be.
Hmm.
So we drove from Crystal down to Northfield, and by the time we got there, uh, it turns out Dorothy and Ozzy changed their mind. Yeah, for real. And I'm not even kidding. And so my dad, I remember he Dorothy had the old black old school rotary dial telephone, and I remember him picking it up and making call after call. Would you take Stevie? Oh, sorry. Uh, would you take Stevie? Would you take Stevie? And and finally somebody said yes, and it was a cousin I had never met before up on the Iron Range, and so we drove from Northfield to the Iron Range, and my
Oh
dad,
my
now
God.
he's like desperate, like, oh my gosh, I want to make sure that you know somebody's going to take this kid, and so uh, he had my hair all slicked back, and I'm in like this polyester shirt, and I want to say I had like Sears Toughskins with like the numbers 1 through 9, and 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 so then I ended up going and meeting my well, I didn't have to go anywhere. They came to the house because that's where they lived, and in walks my cousin and some of his buddies. Well, they just come out of the off the lake, fishing, and they're all in tattered, flannel shirts and blue jeans, and here I am, this city slicker 9-year-old kid that's like, it's like whoa, and yeah. So what ended up happening is one of the neighborhood one of the neighborhood friends of my cousin uh, asked me, we're at the movies, and he's like, hey, you want a secret? And I'm like, I don't know how many listeners even remember what secret is, but it's like in the Altoid 10 nowadays. Um, and open it up, and it's in there, it's a tightly wound doobies. Okay. And what they were looking for is they wanted to see this little 9-year-old get stoned. And turns out this little 9-year-old me, I loved it. And yeah, and it was amazing because Joey, when I was
Yeah.
stoned, I didn't think about, getting dropped off up on the Iron Range and, all this crap that had happened in my life. And yeah, and so then I lived there a year, finished fourth grade at Chena Elementary up there, and then moved to the Valley. And when we were at the Valley, I don't know, you remember? Shout out to Doug Paget. You remember Doug?
I remember the name.
Okay, okay, yeah. So Doug or Duke, I would always call him Duke, and I still call him Duke. He was actually like best man at my wedding, and but there at the Valley, his parents are the caretakers for the complex at the Village Terrace Apartments. Uh, you come down the hill, and there's a pool in the middle and 4 buildings around, and so anyways, they said to him, they said, hey, there's a boy that's moving in, and you should go meet him. And so he met me, and I remember talking to him, and I don't know, it was interesting, when you all of a sudden start getting introduced to trouble, and it's like you got kind of a sense of people that are like-minded and people that aren't,
Yeah.
and it seemed like we were not like-minded at the time. So I asked him, I says, hey, can you tell me, are there any troublemakers around here? And he says, yeah. And so, for the sake of the video here, I'm not really gonna say much more other than I found the house, and I knocked on Trouble's door, and you know what Trouble did, Joey? Opened the door and welcomed me right in, brother. So yeah, so that's how I entered the
Did the
valley, and
did the
yeah.
the boy where Trouble opened the door, were his initials CC?
Uh,
No?
uh,
We can edit this out if you want.
yeah, but that is affirmative.
Oh my God, he's a
Yeah,
legend. He's
and
a legend.
here's the good news is the really cool news is that we're good friends
Yeah.
today. I actually I've never forgotten his birthday. I say that with not for pride's sake, but for the sake of that I we made a connection early on, and so it's
Yeah.
lifelong. So I've never forgotten his birthday, and yeah, yeah, I still
I would love
yeah.
to. I don't know if he would be into it, but I would love to interview him. So let's go back to the apartments. Um, there was a bunch of people that lived there. Paul Constantine, I think, lived there.
Yep, Kazi.
Cause there was a teacher, Bevan, the gym teacher, I think, lived there. Did you know that? Remember,
Okay.
Mr. Bevan came along later.
Okay.
Um, who else? There was a 4-H club that met up near there. So what was it like for you, coming from what was it like for you landing in Golden Valley, and what were your like your first impressions, and yeah, just kind of like what did you think?
I I had a lot of good thoughts when I was hanging out with the troublemakers.
Yeah.
Yes. So yeah, yeah. I didn't really think too much about the
Who'd you have in fifth grade?
city
Who was your
things.
teacher?
I want to say Mrs. Eggy.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you remember her?
I do, but I thought she was earlier, but she might have moved around a little bit,
Okay.
as they do.
Yeah, I
Who'd
think
you
Mrs.
who'd you have in who'd you have in sixth grade?
Who?
It would either be Rova, Bannock, or Kafkas, I think.
Hmm.
You're like none of them.
I here's the thing. Here's the thing that Joy the sixth grade was probably my toughest one of my toughest years because
Hmm.
um, I I ended up well in fifth grade. I ended up going to my first ever rock and roll concert, uh, and it was a group
So
called
young.
Boston. Boston, you heard of them?
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Hell
right.
yeah. Oh my
And
God.
but check
So
this out.
good.
But check this out. My dad dropped me off, and I went to the concert unaccompanied.
And you were, what are we in fifth grade? We're 10, 11, 12?
Yeah, like right in there. Let's
Yeah.
just we could call it 11. 10 and a
Yeah.
half, 11.
Pretty young.
Pretty young, pretty young. And so my advice to the listeners today, especially that are new parents, not a good idea to yeah, not a good idea. I wouldn't advise it because when I was at this concert, all of a sudden a whole new world opened up for me, and so yeah, yeah. So sixth
I
grade,
remember, oh, go
yeah.
ahead.
So sixth grade, I ended up I came across my report card somewhere, and it was just it was really just I don't know merciful of my teachers to like or I don't know if it was merciful or was like get out of here, one of the two. But I want to say I was absent for over 30 days, and yeah, and I would disguise my voice. I thought I was really cool.
You call in.
I'm a scholarship today. and and then it took some time, but at one there was a day where my dad came home because the school had called him
Yeah.
finally, and he come home and was like Steve, and I was like whoa, yeah, yeah. But I had different codes with my neighbors, and that'll also remain non named. But like, you know, we'd bang on the on the wall, uh, for like, okay, come on down. I got some new reefer. Or come on up. I got reefer, and or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And so I remember this one time where my dad, he's just going, to get food, and I'm like, I'm not really thinking this all through, right? Because what practicing addict really does have a lot of really good thoughts. Um,
Right.
Not this one. And anyways, um, what ended up happening is I had just got a hold of this amazing Acapulco Gold, and I had scored a new bong at down in the valley, and so I like tapping, come on down, and so we're just getting blasted, and all of a sudden I see my dad coming home, and because I lived on the first floor, and I was facing the parking lot, and I'm like, oh, and and so he takes off, and my dad comes home, my room's, my door's shut, and he comes in, and this wall, billow
Yeah.
of smoke opens up, and I think my dad just about passed out, but he actually didn't pass out. He actually got pretty pissed. And then of course I'm like, Dad, he's like, where'd you get it? And I'm like, I found it, by the tracks. So, I mean, yeah, just growing there behind the tracks. How good reefer grows behind your tracks.
Yeah, on the railroad tracks. Yep.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, just
I remember
yeah.
going to your birthday party. I
You
honestly
do.
do. I
Okay.
do. It's not a Kodak memory. I know I've seen the pictures, but
Yeah,
I remember going. Yeah, and I remember, I just remember being like, this is a different situation, you know.
sure.
But this is cool, you know. I like Steve. You were like, I don't know, you're kind of the same. Like you look the same. It's amazing. I mean, you look exactly the same, and you had a happy vibe. Like, even, with everything that you were going through, that you went through, and it's just like God blessed you with like this disposition of just being like, I'm gonna make the best of this and put a smile on my face and see what happens.
Mm, sure.
I don't know. I don't know if that's right or not. That's my take on you. But I remember the party. We had a really good time. McGreevy was there. I think McGreevy lived in the apartments too, didn't they? Or
Yeah, you
no?
sure did. Yep.
Yeah. And his sister, Sherry, I think was her name.
Hmm.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Um. Anyways, so what happened with, I mean, we've introduced the substances into the story, which is appropriate, because they took a big, they def
Sure.
okay. So
Yeah,
yeah,
go
just take
figure.
me through the rest.
I was gonna say, go figure. You froze up as soon as you said substances.
Somebody's listening. um so take me through the rest of school, through middle school and high school. What was it like? Just anything that comes to mind. And what was it like, the whole merger? What was it like at Golden Valley? Any bad things, good things, things that stand out, and what it was like for Lindbergh and Eisenhower. And then what happened? I mean, you don't seem stoned right now, so what happened there?
Sure. Right. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. No, for as far as the Golden Valley, I would uh, and as far as like what happened and why I'm you know don't look stoned today is because I'm not. I actually we had a guy in the neighborhood. I want to say his name was Tony Drone, and
I remember that name. I'm not kidding.
okay, okay. Um, and Tony ended up being one of the first of the group that I was hanging around that went through drug treatment, and he would get on our case after he got out of treatment. He was kind of on a mission
Mm-hmm.
uh, to have an influence on uh, those that were under the influence, right? And so, and plus he was tough. He was kind of like a badass, and it definitely a little bit intimidating. And so he's like, "You got pot? I know you do." He says, "We're gonna flush it down the toilet," and so you know, we flush it down the toilet, uh, and
We have
then
internet complications, and I'm not. There we go.
okay, you're good now. And so then what ended
We're
up
good.
happening
Yeah, we're good.
is
Sorry.
okay, perfect. Um, so so if when I realized that Tony was going to be around, I made sure that if I was going to be carrying any pot on me, it was always just a little bit, just in case. He made me throw it away. And so, but the one thing that he
Oh,
really
so he was pretty aggressive with his. He was pretty. He was pretty aggressive with his with his rehab.
exactly he was yep, he was mission minded, you might say. Um, and yeah, yeah. So the yeah, but that said, I ended up going to my very first AA meeting, uh, Alcoholics Anonymous, when I was 11 years old. Uh, and I still remember the meeting. I don't remember any of the people, but I remember going there, and and this one guy handed me this little uh, this little foldable business card that had the 12 steps and 12 traditions of Alcoholics Anonymous on it, and said like you know keep coming back, it works, stuff like that. And I'm like, yeah, I was going there basically to get Tony off my case. And so then I came home after those first two meetings, and I got high those nights. Um, and yeah, and then like, oh, probably about almost 2 years later, the I ended there was two of my friends that ended up getting I don't know, they ended up dying, and it was related to what I just I don't know if it was something that I used to justify it, but it was related to drugs. And and even though I considered myself like a badass, that scared me. And I decided to go back to AA, and I started going regularly. And that was in September of 1978. Uh, yeah, and and that's actually, uh, Joy. That's actually the last day that I was under the influence of any substance, controlled or
Oh my
non-controlled.
God. I had no idea
Yeah.
that it was that early that you got sober. That's incredible.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yep. The uh, well, then what ended up happening is in eighth grade there was two students. I wish I could remember their names, but they came to class and they talked about the support group uh, that was available at school, basically for kids like us that maybe have some trouble at home or whatever. And and so I decided to go, and I was there. I was really interested in talking to them um, about my dad and about his drinking, and how you know, I had the number to Howard Johnson's memorized because that was his favorite, you know, drinking
Mm.
spot. And I would call Hojo's, they're like, "Oh, you're looking for your dad," and and they're like, "Joe, it's your kid," you know, and well, the more that I ended up sharing in this group at school, the more that they thought, maybe I have an issue, and so one of my counselors at school, her name was Sharon. I don't remember her last name, but she tried really hard to get me into um, Shanti House, is a halfway house,
Hmm.
because what started happening to me, Joey, is that I ended up um going into like my old behaviors, but I wasn't using. So I was on what they call a dry drunk, and but all of my behaviors, I was angry again. I was, just all the stuff, except for I was sober,
Right.
and so she tried to get me in that halfway house, and that didn't work because it turns out they had a prerequisite that every person has to go through drug treatment. It's a no
Hmm.
contest. It's it's the way they do things. Well, treatment was not an option, and then all of a sudden, Joey, like 2 days later, it was, and
Hmm.
and I ended up going into treatment at St. Mary's, which is now Fairview Riverside.
Me too.
You went to St. Mary's?
Yes.
No way! I had no
Yes.
idea. No!
Years later, but yes.
Wow!
Yeah.
Wow!
Was there a woman named Marlene Qualley there when you were there?
Marlene.
She was the
Hmm.
alumni director.
Okay. Okay.
The
Uh,
only reason I say that is because she was. I mean, she was there a long time. But anyways, go on. Sorry.
okay. Okay.
St.
Well, there
Mary's.
was Sister Martha.
Okay.
Did you know a Sister Martha?
No.
Okay. Um, I'm trying to remember. Yeah, one of my counselors. There's a David Ross. Did you know him?
No. No.
No. Okay. Well, I remember him. So when I went to treatment my very first day, I remember exactly. I wish I had the photo, but you can picture it pretty clearly because I remember it vivid. I had a tie-dye shirt on. I love tie-dye, but I had a tie-dye shirt on, and it was a picture of a man, uh, kind of scooching down into a Corvette. Okay, and it said on it, "Wrap your ass in fiberglass." Okay, and then I had a red bandana. Yeah, and yeah, because I was a badass. Uh,
Yeah.
and 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 so the thing that was wild when I went into treatment, um, I got called out in group. I had to. They do odd things that you don't experience in other parts of your life. Um, and so one of the things they made me do is wear a big old sign the size of a lunch tray and around my neck. And I still write really tiny. And so I had to write super big. That's why they gave me this big ass lunch tray, um, big piece of cardboard to write on. And this is exactly what I remember it saying. Okay. So I think it's pretty darn close. And it said, "I need to move to reassure myself and others that I am alive and have feelings. Please confront me when I'm immobile." And in the corner, it said C Squad ISO. Okay.
Oh my God. That's
Yeah.
fucking
Yeah.
great.
And that's because That's because when I was at treatment in the early days, I was just like a rock. I was just like,
Right.
and so one of the things they had me do is I had to rock back and forth. That was a requirement. I had to rock back and forth in my chair, and you know, I always had to be moving. And so that's where some movement really started in my life. Some real core things, because uh, really what ended up happening ultimately is that I shared some stuff with my counselor that was, you know, it was just, yeah, it just broke through, and
Right.
and um and my life is forever changed.
Amazing.
Yeah, yeah. Uh so I got this back in the day.
Yeah.
I got that from St. Mary's, and and on the back,
Very nice.
okay, and Joey, I got out of treatment on let's see, it was November of 1980 is when I got out, and and I've been carrying this coin with me every single day. Now, I will tell you, I did lose it in a chair, uh, and you know, it fell out of my pocket, and I lost that sucker for like 2 years. And but
In your
I
house,
did,
like a chair in your house?
yeah, yeah. We found it. We found it during a move, and it's like, what's my coin? Oh my gosh! But I did not use it as an excuse to get stoned.
Yeah. Good man.
Yeah, and yeah. So yeah, but yeah. So
Wow. Okay, so I mean, it's a big, that's like a huge, that's like the foundational story of, like, one of the foundational stories of your life, right?
absolutely.
Um, if not the foundational. So, what was the rest of Golden Valley existed for a couple more years? How did that go for you? Did you like school, or were you like, I just want to be done with this, or you know?
Well, of course, you know, treatment took me away from school, um, and then
But you came back, right? We didn't. Did you go through? Did you
yeah,
stay with our school district all the way through graduating?
I graduated from Hopkins.
Yeah.
Yep, yep, and so three days after I got out of drug treatment, it was Thanksgiving Day in 1980, and I went out into the living room to turn on the Macy's Day Parade, and there on the floor was my dad. He had slit his wrists.
Oh my God, I
Yeah,
forgot about this. Oh my God, Steve, the hits keep coming. Oh,
right. Yeah, and
okay.
and and so that took me out of the valley again, you know, for a bit, because I ended up in foster care, and I ended up you know, going to St. Joe's Home for Children in Minneapolis until
Did
I got
your
out.
dad didn't make it?
No, here's the good news. He did make it.
Oh, he did make it.
He did make it. That is huge. I'm so grateful that he did. Um,
Is he still with us? Is he still alive?
he did pass away. He passed away on January 18th of 1989.
Okay,
Yeah, yeah. Um,
but not in 1980.
Not in 1980, brother. Nope. I'm so grateful he did not. But it was a long road. Um, uh, Now, just back to treatment for just a second.
Yeah.
Uh, you went to aftercare and stuff?
I did. I was not a good student, you know. I mean, I here's my short thing with I went to St. Mary's in 91, I think. No, 89 or 90.
Okay.
And um, you know, I'd been in college off and on for years, and I was just, you know, I was just a party. I was a party animal, um, and a degenerate, but you know, a nice degenerate. I was not troublesome. I just was high and drunk all the time. Um, and I go to rehab, and I wanted to go to rehab. I mean, I could not understand why I couldn't stop doing this. You know, why I couldn't stop
Hmm.
drinking and smoking pot, which were my things, and um, and I go to rehab, and I feel great. Like I get reunited with with like the Joey, you know, that I could, you know, that I could live with,
Right.
and and it was almost like too like it just I felt so amazing, but I came home and there was pot in my room that I had hidden, and so I'm like at my desk and like going through a change, like a bowl of change and matchbooks and stuff, and like, oh, there's some weed, and I'm like, well, I have to smoke that, and I did, and so I didn't stay sober, but I went to aftercare. I told them about it, and I didn't really, it didn't take right then, you know. I had to go
Hmm.
out and do some more research, and then I just had a, you know, like a year later on Halloween, 1992, Halloween of 1992, I put down a beer at a party and went home, and I've never drank or drugged since. And I just started going to AA the next day. So it just, you know, it hit when it hit. But rehab was huge, I'm sure. You know, like I learned everything I needed to know for that day, you know, going to rehab. So, anyways,
Nice. I was just curious if you had ever heard the name Bruce Stedman.
sounds familiar. Is he like a big book study guy?
He was an aftercare counselor
Okay,
at
maybe.
St. Mary's.
Yeah. I love St. Mary's. I
Yeah,
mean, I really did. Yeah, it was
right.
like, I mean, it felt so good to like not be stoned and drunk anymore. And
Mhm.
yeah, I just couldn't. It almost felt too good. It's a weird thing to say, but I was like, you know, I was like, so, anyways. So, so your dad, your dad does this. You end up in foster care.
Yep,
What
yep.
and
And my
pick up this
first,
thread there, if you don't mind.
yeah, for sure. So the my first foster home was in Robbinsdale, and my foster mom, great, super kind lady, huge heart.
Hmm.
Her name was Bunny, and and but you know, Joey, I ended up getting kicked out. Uh, I just wasn't ready, um, and the tools that I had, I just, it just didn't. Yeah, it just wasn't a fit, or I don't know. I
Right,
I still had stuff. I still had stuff to work on.
right.
I, I still do. Just for the record. Just for the record.
Yeah,
And
me too.
uh, so then that led me back to St. Joe's, and and then from there, my caseworker says, "Hey, there's a family um, up in Champlin, and which is the Anoka Hennepin School District." And so we went, met this family. Uh, it was a different setup, because it was a family setup, and uh, Greg and Diane, foster dad, foster mom, they had two daughters of their own at the time, and ooh, could be three. Um, and I have to look
Two
at
or
the
three.
photo. It could be three. I have to look at the photo. and then and then some foster sisters and a foster brother, and all worked out. There was a total of 11 of us.
Oh my God. Wow, that's
Hmm.
impressive.
Yeah, right.
Good for them.
And
Amazing.
and so in this, it was like, I mean, I was just in shock the whole time, right? And just like, what have I gotten into? And Greg could kind of sense that, you know, and so he said, "Hey, just want to let you know we have two rules, and the first rule is everybody's got to eat all meals together, all 11 of us." And Joey, I like to eat, and I still do, brother. Um, and and then they said the other rule is everybody's got to go to church. And I thought, yeah, that's really not going to work for me. Uh, and then he was very quick to let me know that he gives every kid a 2-week trial. And they said we're leaving tomorrow for Gooseberry State Park. Uh, and I had no clue, where that was even, and what it's all about. But it wasn't St. Joe's, and and so I'm like, okay, do I go on the camping trip for 2 weeks or back to St. Joe's? And so Joey, I ended up choosing the camping trip, and ultimately, I mean, that's where huge, huge things happen in my life. Huge. And
That's where your faith really kind of was born.
that is where my faith really got its foundation. Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Yep. And one of the things that really led me to that whole discovery is that Greg, he's got a routine, and his routine is he's like early to bed, and he's also early to rise. Okay. Um, but I messed up his routine because I had all these questions. Because in the, especially in the program, I'm still going to meetings, and there's all these old timers are saying, it's a spiritual program and all these things, and so I've got all kinds of, you know questions along those lines, and I also got questions like, you know like how did I end up like this, you know with my family and stuff like that. I got a lot of questions, and
Mm-hmm.
well, I definitely messed up the man's bedtime, and regularly, and but he was so patient, um, and answered my questions, and not like, he got all the answers, by any means, but took the time to listen, and
Right.
that really meant a lot to me, and and made a big impact in my life, and ultimately what it comes down to is uh, it turns out this Jesus that they talked about is really who I'd been looking for all along. And ultimately, Joy, it was a journey, because I think I went through a little, kind of like back, when we talked about Tony Drone and his like throw your drugs away. I think I think undoubtedly I had a period of like, you gotta find God. Um and and then I realized too, I had this feeling inside that that's that's not what I would want. Uh and that's not how I would want to discover God, if you will. Um and I used to there was some times, actually Duke and Kazi, they remember some times where I would I would like literally preach at them like at the top of my lungs, um, out my second floor window, uh, as soon as their parties broke up. And
Right.
I would say crazy stuff. And it was really shortly thereafter that I remember, talking to them individually and saying, you know what? I just want to tell you that I'm really sorry for kind of behaving like that, and because I really care about you, and I'd really love to be your friend, and yeah, and that ended up changing the dynamic of our relationship as well. Um, yeah. So yeah. So go ahead, Joy.
Well, thank you for sharing all that, and I want to talk more about that, but I want to come back to that maybe later or another time. Um, and get back. So, how did you end up getting back to Golden Valley or Hopkins Lindbergh?
Perfect. So how I got back was, um, one of the things that Greg and Diane they they see tremendous value of reconnecting these foster kids with their families, if at all possible,
Hmm.
at you know safely and that sort of thing. Um, and and so I lived with Greg and Diane for 9 months, and after that 9 months, I went back to the valley, went back to the village, um, and yeah, I mean, I was still, you know, visiting my dad and that sort of thing, but yeah, went back to the village, got back in the school district.
Where were you living then? Were you still living with Greg and in Robbinsdale or wherever?
No, Greg was in Champlin.
Champlin,
Um,
right? Sorry.
yep, yep, that's okay. And yeah, so I moved back in with my dad in Golden Valley
You
after,
did.
yep, after living with Greg and Diane for 9 months. And during that time while I was living with Greg and Diane, I went to Anoka High School. Yeah, so I got a chance to tour a lot of schools, brother.
Now let's just Anoka versus GV, which I mean, you know who's buttering your bread right now, so you know which one you have to pick. What was Anoka like? Let's just put it that way. What was Anoka like?
Anoka was, for me. I was, I I was more. I wrestled, um, and
Did you
but
wrestle at GV before Anoka, or was that where the wrestling started? Because I remember you
I
wrestling.
yep, I started wrestling at GV.
Okay.
Yep, and uh, but yeah, I was I was well, let's just say I was going through a lot of changes, and and uh, but once I got back to Golden Valley, oh my gosh, it was so great to rekindle, the friendships. The one thing that really was huge for me at Anoka though is I got uh, I met these wonderful people with this organization called Student Venture, and it's basically like a high school ministry of Campus Crusade for Christ,
Hmm.
and they they cared about me. Uh, and Joey, it's no secret, I like to be cared for. Uh, and 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 it was just nice. But
Yeah.
we we developed some bonds, and then it turns out that they ended up coming to Hopkins, and and starting kind of a chapter of student venture there.
Today marks 17,427 days sober. And yes, that's a lot of days. But here's the truth. There's no day more important to my recovery than today. Not yesterday, not tomorrow, today. Because recovery lives in today. This little boy had no idea where life would take him. No idea how much pain was ahead. No idea that one day grace would rewrite his story. This isn't just a story about addiction. It's a story about survival, about foster care, about loneliness, about the Navy, about love, about recovery, and ultimately about redemption. I grew up in a world that often felt unstable. There were moments of love, but there was also confusion, fear, pain, and uncertainty. My struggles with addiction started early, very early. I first started using drugs when I was 9 years old. And by the time I was 11, I attended my first AA meeting. Most kids that age are worried about bicycles or baseball cards. I was already fighting for my life, even if I didn't fully understand it yet. About 2 years later, I began work in a recovery program, one day at a time. September 8th, 1978. But getting sober didn't magically fix everything overnight. A couple years later, even though I was sober, emotionally, spiritually, mentally, I was struggling badly. In recovery, there's a phrase people sometimes use, a dry drunk. Looking back, that described me pretty well at the time. My high school counselor, Sharon, recognized that I needed more help. She originally tried to get me into a halfway house called Shanty House. But one of their requirements was that residents first complete a formal treatment program. And thankfully, an opening became available at St. Mary's Hospital. So on October 24th, 1980, even though I was sober, I entered drug treatment. Looking back now, I realized treatment was not about punishment. It was about healing, about learning how to live honestly, and finally beginning to deal with the pain underneath the addiction. That season became another turning point in my life, because recovery didn't happen all at once, not perfectly, but one day at a time. For a long time, I viewed my childhood only through the lens of what was broken. But recovery taught me something important. Broken people can still love imperfectly. And healing begins when we stop denying the pain, without losing compassion for the people carrying wounds of their own. As a foster kid, I spent much of my life searching for something I couldn't quite name. Safety, belonging, home. Some houses hold memories. Some hold wounds. And some become the places we spend our lives trying to heal from. But one decision changed the direction of my life forever. When I was living with Greg and Diane in my second foster home, I was given a choice. I could return to St. Joe's Home for Children, or I could go on a 2-week camping trip. And that camping trip became the beginning of something much bigger than I could understand at the time, because it was there. Through Greg and Diane, that I first began learning about Jesus Christ. Not religion used as pressure, not fear, but hope, real hope. The kind of hope that tells a hurting kid, your life still has value. Your story isn't over, and you are deeply loved. Greg and Diane became incredibly important people in my life during those years. And this Bible, this isn't just my Navy Bible. This is the Bible Greg and Diane gave me as a foster kid. I've carried it through deployments, through recovery, through life, and somehow it carried me to, eventually, I joined the United States Navy. That decision changed the trajectory of my life. My dad worked in sales, but he believed it would be important for me to learn a skill, something I could do with my hands, something practical that would give me stability in life. And he was right. The Navy gave me responsibility, discipline, structure, and it gave me a foundation that still impacts my life today. I learned how to operate and maintain systems aboard ship. And all these years later, I'm still running a boiler plant. That skill became a career, a livelihood, a source of pride. The Navy didn't erase my past, but it helped shape my future. It taught me how to show up, how to work hard, how to carry responsibility alongside other people. And for a young man searching for direction, that mattered deeply. I served aboard the USS Emory S. Land, AS-39, and one deployment took us around the world in 180 days. Ditch to ditch, we called it, from Norfolk, Virginia, through the Suez Canal, and home through the Panama Canal, around the world in 180 days. Ship life changes you. Long days, tight spaces, hard work, and a whole lot of time alone with your thoughts. There's something about sweating in the belly of a ship at sea that forces you to grow up fast. But in the middle of all that, there was Kathy. And one of the most unforgettable moments of my life happened while I was stationed in Norfolk, Virginia. I walked all the way to the end of Pier 23 to a phone booth at the edge of the pier, and I called Kathy's father to ask permission to marry his daughter. And when he said yes, I was overwhelmed with joy. And then, standing right there at the end of that pier, I immediately called Kathy long distance and proposed to her over that telephone line. And when she said yes, oh my goodness, my heart absolutely exploded with joy. Because for a young man who had spent so much of life longing for family, that moment meant everything. Before social media, before texting, before FaceTime, there were love letters, phone calls when you could get them, and cassette tapes recorded from halfway around the world. I still remember sitting in my rack aboard ship, recording cassette tapes for Kathy on my Sony Walkman. You can even see the countdown calendar hanging behind me. 6 months until home. And taped beside my rack were photos of us. Family meant everything to me. Still does. With all I've been through, I've learned to treasure connection. Those were special days, simple days, hard days, beautiful days. And then life gave us another incredible gift. We became parents. Our son, Benny, gave me a birthday card years ago that I recently discovered tucked inside that Bible that Greg and Diane gave me all those years ago. I just hope someday I can do half as good a job raising my firstborn as you have done. And there are certain things a father never forgets, not because they're perfect words, but because they heal places inside you that thought you would always stay broken. Growing up, all I ever really wanted was family. And somewhere along the way, by the grace of God, that's exactly what I received. But eventually, like so many people carrying unresolved pain, I found myself battling addiction more deeply again. And addiction doesn't usually begin with rebellion. A lot of times it begins with hurting, with loneliness, with trying to quiet something inside you. But recovery gave me tools. Recovery gave me people. Recovery gave me truth. And over time, recovery gave me a life worth protecting. And underneath all of that, the deepest foundation of hope in my life has been my relationship with Jesus Christ. Not perfection, not having all the answers, but knowing I've never walked alone. My faith became the anchor underneath recovery, the anchor underneath healing, the anchor underneath hope. And one day at a time, that hope kept carrying me forward. That's how 17,427 days happen, not through perfection, not through strength alone, just daily surrender, daily honesty, daily willingness. Today, when I look back across 17,427 sober days, I don't see a perfect life. I see grace. I see people who helped carry me when I couldn't carry myself. Greg and Diane, Kathy, my children, friends, recovery, faith. And I see a God who never gave up on me, even when I had given up on myself. If there's one thing I've learned, it's that our stories don't have to end where the pain began. Healing is possible. Recovery is possible. Forgiveness is possible. Hope is possible. And if you're listening today and some part of this story connected with you, I'd love for you to be part of this journey. Not because I have life all figured out, but because I know what it feels like to need hope. So if this episode encouraged you, follow the podcast, subscribe on YouTube, share this episode with someone who may need hope right now. Leave a review. And if this episode connected with you personally, you're always welcome to reach out to me directly at steve@hopewithinreach.net. I may not always be able to respond immediately, but I do read your messages, and they truly mean a lot to me, because stories heal in community, and none of us were meant to do this life alone. And if God can rewrite my story, there's hope for yours too. Thank you for listening. And remember, hope is always within reach.